Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October 2023 quarterly meeting of Safe Silver Spring. Thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm one of the officers of Safe Silver Spring. We meet in February, May, October, and December with the leadership of the 3rd District of the Montgomery County Police Department to learn from them about what's been going on in the community and to ask questions. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have. Put them in the chat, and if you wave your hand wildly, we might be able to call on. You can ask your questions orally. Right now, I'm going to turn the program over to Commander David McBain, who's a commander of the 3rd District, and he's going to lead us through the program for however long he wants to talk. Mr. McBain.
Thank you very much, Alan. I really appreciate everything you do with this community event. So real quick, I'll just go through. On the call tonight is Captain Dave Reed, who is still assigned to the 3rd District, and I'll talk a little bit about his capacity in the 3rd District. Lieutenant Tony Galladora, who oversees our George sector, which is primarily downtown Silver Spring and surrounding neighborhoods. Lieutenant Greg Schmiel, who handles the Ida sector. That's Briggs, Cheney, Burtonsville, White Oak, that area of 29 and New Hampshire Avenue. And then Lieutenant Al Diezenkowski, who handles the Henry sector, which is typically Hillendale and south, going towards the Prince George's County line into Piney Branch and Long Branch. So all those lieutenants and Captain Reed are on the call. And so as I'm going through tonight, I'm going to do most of the talking. But as we're going through and you have questions, these guys are going to be monitoring the chat and trying to knock down some questions as I talk. I can't do both, and so I think that'll be a good way of handling things tonight. So what I'm going to do tonight is first I'm going to review crime stats, and I'm going to give a 2022-23 comparison. I'll say right up front, things are not looking great, but I think it's most important that I'm honest with the community and say, you know, what we're seeing problems with and why we think that we're having the problems and what we're doing about it. I will offer a breakdown of sector crimes. So the George, Ida, and Henry sector. If you know where you live and what sector you live in, and you want specific information, I have breakdowns on that. You can actually ask your lieutenant on the chat if you know which lieutenant would be yours. And then I'm going to, I want to specifically talk about the number of homicides that we've had this year. And I just want to break it down and explain the increase and why, just some of the things about it. I'm going to discuss calls for service. I'm going to discuss pursuits, traffic stats. I'm going to talk about our Adopt a Neighborhood program that's expanded greatly in all 3 sectors. And I'm going to talk about our license plate readers, or LPR, and our camera technology that we're using throughout the entire district. And then finally, I'm going to kind of wrap it up with just to give an overview of our newest addition to the district with our District Crisis Intervention Team officer. So let's just go and start looking at the statistics that are going on in the Silver Spring District, or the 3rd District. And typically, I'm just going to go over the crimes that we really pay most attention to, our Part 1 offenses, and give you a little bit of a comparison, because we've seen some increases. We've seen a couple of decreases in some areas, but we've seen quite a bit of crime this year. Starting with homicides. For those of you that have been on the call and been around for a while, you realize that last year at this time there was only 1 homicide in the district, and we have 10 this year. So unfortunately, that would really be, comes out to be a 900% increase in homicides. Again, I want to go back to homicides after I go through these statistics just to talk a little bit more about that. As far as robbery is concerned, they're actually up about 8%, 139 last year, 150 this year. Aggravated assaults, they're actually down, but only by 140 last year, 139 this year. So we have a 1% decrease. And then when we start talking about the property crimes, burglary, we have a 6% increase, 267 burglaries last year, 284 this year. That's commercial and residential. And then larcenies, just your general thefts, they're up about 16%, 1,900 last year and 2,200 this year. And then finally, auto theft. This is where we've seen a massive increase throughout the entire region and Montgomery County. Last year at this time, we had 254 auto thefts, and this year we have 779. So we've seen a 207% increase in auto thefts. So like I said, not something I love sharing, but I think it's important to be truthful and honest with the community. We definitely have a lot of stuff going on in the district, and we're trying to attack it on many different fronts. So now, with that, what I want to do is I want to talk about the homicides a little bit, and I've kind of broken down these homicides, and I want to make sure people understand. No one deserves to die. I don't want to see anybody lose their life in the district as a result of a homicide, but I want to put a little bit of a context to what we've experienced this year. And I want to kind of break down these types of homicides. So of the 10 homicides, I'll tell you that 9 of them really occurred on streets, in the 3rd district. We had one infant that was the result of a shaken baby syndrome, and that child died this year. So that is a homicide that we've already made an arrest on. But so that would be the 10th homicide. But we're talking about 9 that occurred out on the streets. Of those 9, 7 of those cases have been closed by arrest, and 2 of the cases are still open. But I will also say that one of the cases, there's an arrest warrant on file, and the subject that we have the arrest warrant for is currently in custody in the District of Columbia on unrelated charges, but we have a detainer on that individual, so they're no longer a threat to the community. So really, we have 8 individuals from our 9 homicides that are in custody, and we still have the one outstanding case. I can't talk about it, but I'm very confident that before year's end, we'll have that individual in custody. I just can't talk about the particulars of the case. So yes, we had homicides, but we also had them in custody, and we did that very quickly through our major crimes division. Of the homicides, 8 were adults. 1 was a 17-year-old juvenile, and obviously 1 was an infant that I talked about on a March 11th homicide case. 4 of the homicides were down in our George sector in downtown Silver Spring. 1 was down in the Henry sector of the Piney Branch region of the district, and 5 were up in the Briggs Cheney Castle or White Oak area in the Ida sector. 9 of the victims were African Americans, and the 1 infant was a Hispanic child. And so that's the kind of breakdown of where our homicides happened. And I will also tell you that of the 9 homicides, almost every single one of them, the people were acquaintances with one another in the sense of they were meeting together. They had they were known to each other. I guess the easiest way to put it is I don't have any homicides where I have a community member that's out and about who is going to dinner, like something like I experienced last year where a foreign, somebody that they didn't know attacked them and killed them. And so I think it puts a little bit of context to what we're dealing with. Some of the meetings were drug related. Some of them were disputes between family members, but no homicide has occurred this year where a community member that's out and about is attacked by an unknown person. And I think I just wanted to be clear about that. Again, not happy about 10 homicides, but there is some reasons why they occurred, and the fact that we have almost everybody in custody is good for. I'm very happy about that. So, all right. So I want to discuss calls for service, because I just talked to you about a lot of the crimes going up: robbery, homicide, aggravated assaults, and the auto thefts and the burglaries and things. And you maybe would conclude that, well, what are my officers doing out there? Well, I want to start by saying that so for the month of July, my officers were dispatched to 3,755 calls for service just in the month of July. If you break that down, it's approximately 121 calls per day. That doesn't include traffic stops. That doesn't include where they've called out with something. That doesn't include the details that we have to handle and prisoner pickups and all those kinds of things. Those were 121 calls every single day for some type of call for service. So we're really running a lot more calls than we were last year, and we're running from call to call to call with limited resources. And I'll talk about our staffing a little bit later in the presentation. So amongst those 121 calls per day that we kind of are averaging in every single month of the year, we were involved in 16 pursuits, which is almost double any other district in the county. The reasons for that is we're running a lot of license plate readers in downtown Silver Spring and other areas of the district. We're getting a lot of stolen vehicle hits and also carjacking vehicle hits and felonious people hits. And so we're being notified of these vehicles and people in the district, and we're trying to stop the vehicles. We get into pursuits with them, and sometimes we catch them, and quite often, though, they do make it into the District of Columbia, which we don't pursue for most anything into other foreign jurisdictions that surround Montgomery County. We've had 329 uses of force where we've had to use typically our hands to go hands-on with somebody to place them in custody. And we've used our because use of force is being tracked differently now. So whenever we point either our gun or a taser or pepper spray at someone, we're tracking it. So those numbers, they're going to be a little higher than last year because we're tracking it differently. But the 329 uses of force, unfortunately, are probably the highest in the county as well. But it also goes to the fact that we're probably stopping more people, and we have a higher call for service than most other districts, other than maybe the 4th district, which we border to our east. This year we've dealt with a number of shootings, non-contact shootings. So last year we had 28 non-contact and 14 contact at this time, for a total of 42 shootings. This year we've had 46 non-contact and 14 contact shootings for a total of 60. I will tell you that several months ago, most of these shootings were occurring up in the Briggs-Cheney area, and our detective bureau worked tirelessly for months, and they still are working on those cases, and they have executed multiple search warrants. They've seized firearms. They've linked firearms to certain people. They've made arrests, and we've seen a significant decrease in the amount of shootings that we've had up in that area. And it's basically because we've taken these guys out of the population. It was not gang related, but it was kind of just almost not gang, but turf related, people from White Oak being in Briggs Cheney and vice versa. And so we experienced a lot of these shootings, but they've since quieted down, and we've made quite a few arrests, and I'm really happy about that. I want to talk a little bit about auto thefts, because they are such a high number for us this year. For the entire county, auto thefts are up 127%. I would probably be comfortable saying that the entire metropolitan or DMV region has seen a significant increase in stolen vehicles. I do know for a fact that that Prince George's County and DC have hundreds and hundreds of stolen vehicles, more than what we have. Not an excuse, but it's an indicator of the how much of a problem it is in the county and in the DMV. 77% of the thefts are of Kia and Hyundais. So if you own a Kia or Hyundai, my recommendation is that you I think there's some things that the car dealers are offering to upgrade your vehicle with software. And then also for some of the older models, my recommendation would be to get the club, which I think we still are working on getting those out to the community if you want one. But you need to take some extra steps if you drive a Kia or a Hyundai, because of that they are just the number one targeted vehicles. And I'll tell you that the individuals that are targeting those vehicles are juveniles, and we're going to talk a little bit more about juvenile laws and the things that are going on with juvenile justice in the county and in the state of Maryland. But juveniles are responsible for a ton of the crime that I'm talking about tonight, and so again, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But so as far as auto thefts are concerned, we are seeing higher end vehicles stolen as well. Those are more of regional activity of more organized individuals that are stealing high-end cars. But for the bulk of the stolen vehicles, these are cars that are just being stolen and joyrided and then dumped. And we're recovering quite a few of them in the District of Columbia and in Prince George's County. Let's see. I want to talk about Adopt a Neighborhood program real quick. So we started Adopt a Neighborhood in the Hillendale area probably 2 years ago. That quickly expanded. We are operating, I kind of almost lost count, but we have multiple neighborhoods in all three of our sectors that we have officers that are specifically going out and doing community engagement in the communities. And I don't want to put him on the spot, but if Lieutenant Schmiel can just briefly talk about the efforts and the amount of time and what he's seeing up in the Ida sector, I will ask him to do that, because he's really taken this on and is actually doing some of the community engagement himself. So Greg, can you just give an update?
Yeah, certainly. With regards to the community engagement, approximately 4 months ago, we rolled out a community engagement plan in the Ida sector, in which we were specifically targeting community engagement in the shopping centers. And what that was to involve, I tasked every Ida sector officer from lieutenant down to spend at least a half an hour per week in an Ida sector shopping center, not necessarily doing enforcement, but just community engagement, getting out of their cars, walking around, walking into the shops, introducing themselves to the store owners, the customers, helping people carry groceries, things of that nature. The goal there was multi-tiered. First and foremost, obviously, we wanted to have a presence in the shopping centers to deter criminal activity, shoplifting, loitering, things of that nature. But we also wanted to show the community that we were out there and have positive interactions with the police. Ultimately, though, it was also very successful in helping to boost the morale of the officers. Over the last several years, there's been some anti-police rhetoric, and a lot of the officers' morale has been down. Being out there, these officers have noticed a lot of positive reinforcement coming back to them from the community, and they're really having a lot of positive engagement with the citizens and the shop owners. So it's kind of win-win for everybody. The community's happy to see us out there, and the officers are really feeling appreciated. So far to date, after the last 4 months, we are at, I believe, 242 man hours that we've spent in the Ida sector shopping centers, engaging with the community. And we've got a lot of positive feedback, again, from the officers and the community and the shopping centers. We've just begun to roll this program out in the Henry sector as well. So we're working through the kinks there, and we hope to have that up and running smoothly in the next few days, weeks, and have it going on all throughout the district.
All right, thank you very much. So really happy about what we're doing in a lot of the neighborhoods. When you really break it down, we are seeing that our presence in the communities is causing things like theft from auto and auto thefts to go down a little bit in some of these communities that we're in. And then for one final thing, as far as proactivity of our officers, 3D officers, 3rd district officers, they lead the county from all 6 districts with 155 DUI arrests. Like I said, that's the most in the county. The next closest district is at 110. So they perform a lot of traffic stops and they make a lot of arrests for DUI. And then also, as far as traffic stops are concerned, where either a citation, a warning, or an emergency repair order is issued, the 3rd district also leads all of Montgomery County with 3,653 traffic stops, with the next closest district being the 5th district at 3,100. So really happy with the amount of proactive traffic enforcement that my officers are doing. In addition to the police officers, we are, as I said, we're running a lot of license plate readers in the district, and some of them are fixed sites and some of them are in police cars. And so we're tracking the number of hits that we're getting, and it's clearly leading to a lot of arrests. And as I said, a lot of pursuits as well, which is kind of a double-edged sword, and it's very spooky, because pursuits can go very wrong very quickly. In addition to the LPRs, we have other camera technology. For those of you who are frequent downtown Silver Spring, you've seen our camera systems at Ellsworth and Fenton Street. We also have a camera system on Thayer Avenue right now. Actually, the one at Fenton and Ellsworth is not there. We pulled it and put it down on Thayer Avenue to address some robberies. But we also have a camera system up in White Oak at the 7-Eleven on Lockwood. We've seen a significant decrease in the problems that we're having at the bus stops and the 7-Eleven and the gas station there. The camera systems really not only help us get lookouts or see crimes in progress, but it's a huge deterrent. And so we're going to continue to use those. The county's invested heavily in these camera systems. 7 more have just arrived to the county, and I made an application to get another one to put down into downtown Silver Spring. And that would be 3 systems that we'd be currently operating. All 6 district commanders throughout the county are vying for these camera systems, but I've been fortunate to have the most running camera systems so far, and we're going to continue to use those in the future. And finally, I want to talk about the District Crisis Intervention Officer. So for those of you who follow what's going on in Montgomery County with the police department, we have a headquarters unit, crisis intervention team, and they do work in our district. But I felt that it was so important to have my own crisis intervention officer that I opened up a job in the district. Officer Nikki Hawkins interviewed for the job and earned that job. And where I really think that we're going to have a benefit from her is the mere fact of the number of emergency petitions and the number of calls we're dealing with homeless individuals and mental health issues. My hope is that using Officer Hawkins as a somewhat of a subject matter expert, she's going to have the ability to identify problems and issues in the district. She's going to focus a lot of her attentions at Progress Place in downtown Silver Spring, but she's going to be able to knock down things and deal with chronic problems that we're seeing all over the district, specifically and especially in downtown. And my goal there is to free up my officers to handle other calls for service, more serious calls for service, where she can do most of the legwork. And hopefully her efforts will lead to a decrease in the problems that we're seeing with homeless and the mental health issues, the emergency petitions and the occasional crimes that are associated with those groups of our community. And so that's really what we're all, that's what we're doing. A lot of work going on. Just to close out a couple things, and I was talking about this on a call today with the Chamber of Commerce. I won't say who from the group here provided me this information, but I do like it when community members reach out to me when they have good information that's going on in the region, because I don't know everything that's going on. But as far as downtown Silver Spring's concerned, we have a problem with our late night activities, and we've tried for a long time to get things kind of shut down at least by 2 a.m. And we, Captain Reed, who's on the call, has done a lot of work in downtown Silver Spring for our nighttime activities. But the document I was shared with earlier today was Prince George's County. In order to combat their problems they're seeing with hookah bars, they've put in place some pretty strict rules and laws governing the operation of these hookah bars, to the point where they're not allowed to open until 10 a.m. and they have to close by 8 p.m. That's a significant win for the community, in my opinion. But more importantly, when you see Prince George's County take steps like this, my fear is that the people who are using these hookah establishments in Prince George's County, now that they're closed at 8 p.m., are now going to come over to Silver Spring. So that's something I'm kind of monitoring. I've also made it very clear to our county council and the executive of my concerns with the things going on in PG County and the possibility of those problems coming over to Montgomery. So we're working on that. And then finally, one other thing, probably the most amazing thing that or as far as technology is concerned, and I almost overlooked it completely, is our drone program. And Lieutenant Galladora is on the call, and I'm just going to ask him to briefly just give a real quick highlight of how we're using these drones, what the future looks like for the use of drones in calls for service. So Tony, can you just give an update?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commander, and Alan, thank you for having us again. Yeah, as the Commander was saying, drones have been around for a number of years now. We've been using them kind of on mostly for crime scene mapping for a couple years, and then for some tactical cases, mostly barricades and extremely high risk incidents that our SWAT team responds to. But what we saw with some agencies, particularly out in California, were doing what's called drone as a first responder. And what they were doing is when 911 calls would come in, so not surveillance, not flying around all the time, but when 911 calls would come in, they would send a drone in addition to patrol officers, and the drone was often able to get on scene faster, much faster in some cases, because it's going in a straight line, and be able to provide real-time information and updates to responding officers. They had a lot of cases that they were able to kind of slow down and de-escalate because they got a call for a person with a weapon, and they were able to kind of zoom in and see, maybe it wasn't a real weapon, or they had one where it was in an ocean's at the ocean, a person was shooting a handgun into the ocean, and they were able to watch them and saw that nobody was in immediate danger and waited for them to stop to reload, and then had the officers approached. So they really were able to limit their risk to the officers, to the community, to the suspects in a lot of cases. And they sent a few of us out to California to see exactly how these agencies were doing that a few months ago. And we were very impressed and proposed it in Montgomery County. And we did it, data driven. We wanted to look at where the hot spots were for calls for service, and downtown Silver Spring and Wheaton. And downtown Wheaton were kind of the places where we ended up. And based on that, we've done a number of public meetings, community engagement meetings, met with a bunch of different groups. We had a lot of media out there. We did one at Veterans Plaza and one up at the Wheaton Community Center. And the feedback we've gotten has been very positive. And I think that's mainly because of how we made sure that we took all the lessons learned from California with the protections. Particularly, it's not surveillance, it's responding to 911 calls. It is no facial recognition. Somebody asked if it could hear people's conversations. It cannot do that. Somebody asked if it could see through walls. It cannot do that. These are not military grade drones we're looking at or anything like that. Much smaller, about 15 to 20 pounds. And then the transparency piece was the intent is to post all the information about all the flights and missions online on the department's website, so the public can see why it was up there, what type of call it was being used for, and where it went. So that's kind of the 2-minute version of the hour-long discussion we had. And again, we're happy to answer any questions about it. Right now, it's the county executive did propose it, and it's with the council, and I believe they're supposed to be reviewing that in the next few weeks. So we hope to see if it gets approved through the council and ultimately funded, and again in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Tony. And yeah, I see this as the future of law enforcement. It really helps with us doing our job. So Alan, I've gone on for about 30 minutes or so. I'm going to turn it back over to you for any questions, and I hope I've been able to kind of give a snapshot of what's been going on and what we're doing, and yeah. So thank you very much.
So thank you, Commander. I want to focus your attention on something you mentioned at the outset, which was juveniles. I'm looking at a video right now of bunch of kids breaking into something called Home Court on September 19th, 25th, and September 30th. And I understand that it's the same group of kids. I wonder what's the status of that investigation. And then if you could offer some thoughts about why we see this increase or this in-your-face juvenile crime.
Okay, so as far as maybe one of my lieutenants or will have information on the specific crime that you were talking about, while they're trying to figure, while we're figuring that out, I'll tell you that the problem, juveniles have become responsible for so much crime in the district and in the county as a whole, and in the state. For many, if you don't know, Annapolis, or your lawmakers at the state level, they really tightened down on what law enforcement could do with juveniles, and a lot of the juvenile laws that were enacted has really hampered law enforcement's ability to deal with them. And it's not just for minor crimes. These juveniles are conducting very violent acts, carjacking, stolen vehicles. We've had some pretty gruesome attacks in downtown Silver Spring, where we've made some amazing arrests. But what we're finding is that when we grab onto these juveniles, based on the way the law's written now, these juveniles are not placed in custody. They're turned over to their parents, and they're back out on the streets the very next night. And they gloat about it. And they've quickly learned that law enforcement has very little control over what they do right now. Now, I will tell you that it's become so much of a problem in the state, especially in Prince George's County and Montgomery County, and maybe some of the other counties closer to Baltimore City, that Annapolis is re-looking at the laws. And I think what you're going to see is a revision. I think they're going to rewrite some stuff, and they're going to tighten those laws back up a little bit. And I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to do this. I don't want to throw all the blame on the Department of Juvenile Services because they have their hands full. But the one thing I will say is when we have, and I have multiple examples where we have 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds that are committing armed robberies. These individuals are being let back out to their parents, and they're reoffending. And it's my opinion that when you have a violent offender like that, now I don't want to always see people go to jail, but somebody that's that violent needs to be taken into custody by the Department of Juvenile Services. So we have those conversations with them. I think that they have a lot on their plate, but we do work with the Department of Juvenile Services on a lot of different platforms, but they really do need to take a look at taking more of these kids into custody and not simply releasing them back out into the community. And I'm really talking about the violent offenders, not the chronic, the vandals or some of this minor stuff. But we have carjackers. We've arrested the same 14-year-old kid up in Briggs Cheney, 14 years old. In 1 month, in 30 days, we arrested him operating a stolen vehicle 3 times. That's just unacceptable. And there's other examples out there that I could speak of, but that's what we're dealing with. But I truly do think that the state of Maryland, that lawmakers in Annapolis are going to fix that. And that's my hope.
I appreciate that. What about those kids that were involved with the home court clothing and shoe store?
Commander,
burglary,
I could
yes.
jump in.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yep. So I believe we did put out a press release with the video. I don't have an update on as far as if they've identified them since they've done the press release or anything yet. But I think very in line with what the commander is saying. The troubling part is you could tell those are very young individuals that are doing that, and they're doing it over and over. And so I don't have a specific update if an arrest is made on those yet. But I will just say we've had a few. We had it was a 15-year-old said he had a gun and was robbing people, and ultimately he got charged with about 6 or 7 different events. And that was about 2 weeks ago. And then we also recently had a stabbing that occurred downtown. Patrol did an amazing job, and within 2 minutes, this subject was in custody. But it was a 15-year-old with a bloody knife in his pocket, and so it is, the violence we've seen from the juveniles has been very troubling.
I'd invite our audience to, if you have any questions, please raise your hand using the raise hand function under reactions. I think that's where it is. And while we're waiting to see if anybody wants to ask any questions, I want to ask some questions about downtown Silver Springs, because I heard reports about something happening at Fenton and Eastleigh on Sunday. Somebody said there was something happening on Saturday involving a lot of kids, maybe stabbings, maybe shootings. There was a report of something happened on Sunday when I was walking my dog up near Fenton. I saw 6 police cars there. They were just leaving, but I wonder if somebody can talk about what had happened at Eastleigh on Saturday and then Bonifant on Sunday. I think that's that's how it was described to me.
Correct me if I'm wrong, either Tony or Dave, but wasn't Eastleigh a ERT call out?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. That was it was a mental health emergency, and that we did have a full police response for that one. I should say very large police response, including our SWAT team for an armed person with a mental health emergency.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
I did hear something about a bunch of kids in the elevator and that there might have been a firearm. Was that Saturday or was that Sunday? Like I said, I've been getting the reports from social media, and they were saying something was going on in the apartment building. And
Alan, I can tell you that one of the things that I'm working on is I'm actually trying to work with some of the businesses and the security personnel about having officers have the power to trespass kids just when they see a problem to go ahead and trespass them. I'm working with our county attorney to see if legally we can do that and come up with some kind of power of agreement with some of the businesses down there, just like that the block of Ellsworth between Fenton and Ellsworth and Georgia Avenue, where they seem to hang out, cause problems. We're tired of waiting for complaints. We're tired of because people were scared, and the officers are wanting to do something, but a lot of the times their hands are tied because of what the juvenile laws are and what we can and cannot do. And the officers know if they see a crime happening, if they make an arrest, they're going to be placed in their parents' custody within an hour. And everybody here on this talking to you today have seen the body worn cameras of the juveniles telling the officers, I'll be back out here doing this tomorrow and there's nothing you can do to stop me, in front of the parents, in front of the officers. So we are trying to take proactive steps to get to be able to trespass these kids so that we'll just continue to arrest them and get them out of the property.
Thank you, Captain Reed. I saw in the chat that people were asking questions about the efficacy of the late night program. I know that some of the businesses were not supposed to put their security plans. I think they had 6 months, 9 months to put those together. Can you just sort of publicly, because I wasn't reading the chat for that exchange, can you just tell us how that program is going along?
So everything has been approved by the council. We're just waiting for that 6-month hiatus for I guess discussions, I guess just to make sure everything is all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. I've been told either the end of this year or the first of next year. I'm hopeful, but I can tell you that's been another problem. Lieutenant Diezenkowski, he's in charge of the midnight officers, but that has been another stressful event because on some nights, especially weekends, we're spending 60% of our officers that are just babysitting Bonifant from either 2 to 3 a.m. or 6 to 7 a.m., depending on calls for service, just to have officers there. Just a few weeks ago, we almost had 2 officers that got run over by a drunk driver, and we had the officers had to pull them out of the car. They have stopped fights. They respond to complaints at 7 o'clock in the morning when they're coming out on Bonifant Street and they're fighting. It is just it's ridiculous, and the citizens there are tired of it, and we are so ready to get this thing up and running and start having them really hold their feet to the fire as far as what they do. And if they don't abide by the new laws, then we will have grounds to shut them down, and that's the whole point.
There was a little detail in the chat about the events on Sunday at Eastleigh. Somebody wrote, for what it's worth, Eastleigh stabbing was on Sunday afternoon and was originally called in as a stabbing and near simultaneous shooting. Blood stains are still on the sidewalk near Eastleigh, near Orange Theory. Did you just describe that?
I believe that was a juvenile stabbing, and the officers arrested the juvenile a short distance away. I was out of town, but I believe that I remember reading that.
Thank you so much. People who are on the call, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. So I don't dominate, don't dominate the discussion because I have lots of questions. And one of them, I guess, is for, I'll give it to Captain McBain and replace the spotlight, give it to Captain McBain, which is, there's been a lot of things going on we haven't met since May. And it seemed like there was a lot of activity in the White Oak section, which is,
Yep.
2 blocks away from your headquarters. And you mentioned something that I hadn't thought about ever, which is there a rivalry between White Oak and Briggs Cheney? I had never heard anybody describe the situation, that environment as sort of in that district, that there was that kind of issue.
Yeah, so that's why I was trying to kind of dance around that a little bit. There's no gang activity. There's no but what we do have though are we have groups of kids that hang out and live in the Briggs Cheney area, and we have groups that hang out in the White Oak area, and there are times when these groups go in passing, and we have issues with them. And what we really found was we were seeing shootings, and for those of you who don't know or haven't heard me say before, with a lot of these shootings, we tend to not have a lot of witnesses that want to come forward with information. We rely on evidence, on the gun casings, the shell casings. What happens is we enter those into a system called NIBIN, which basically puts a fingerprint on that casing. And what we were seeing these guns come up in different areas of not only Montgomery County, but sometimes we would see a gun based on a NIBIN's hit that was used in Baltimore, Howard County, and Montgomery County. And so over time, we can almost put this gun in the possession of somebody. And what we found was we were seeing same guns used in Briggs Cheney as were used in White Oak. And so clearly there was just some rifts going on, but no gang activity that I had to report, and I would certainly let you know about that.
Appreciate that. Dan Mayer, you have a question?
Just curious, in the chat, somebody says on late Sunday evening around 10 p.m., there were gunshots fired on Woodbury and Richmond. Initially was dismissed at fireworks, however, casings were found the next day. And the question they have is there any additional information or updates available on that? I was wondering if there are.
No. So I'll tell you that I put my paperwork away, but I shared with you guys, we track shootings by non-contact and contact, and we've seen an increase in non-contact shootings. That call, Dan, that you just described would be a non-contact shooting. We typically get very little information, but when we do get there, we collect the shell casings, and obviously we enter those into NIBINs, which I was just talking about. But other than an officer seeing the shooting occurring in progress, a lot of our non-contact shootings are simply investigations, which our detective bureau continues to follow up. And again, the ballistics really is the telling tale of who did it, and oftentimes we will arrest somebody with a gun and then link them to certain crimes, whether it be a non-contact or contact shooting and or a homicide.
Thank you.
Yes.
I've got a question that I've asked probably for the last couple of meetings about cannabis. And I think that,
everybody's doing it.
That you mentioned last year that there was a lot of violence that was related to cannabis, including some of the homicides. And I'm wondering, since we changed the law at the state level for the legalization of cannabis, whether or not the violence that's related to cannabis has declined or has it stayed the same? And have you had any issues with that new law that says that you can't approach a vehicle if you smell cannabis coming outside.
Yeah. So that's where I want to kind of focus on Alan. And I clearly was not happy to see Annapolis pass that law, which basically made the odor of cannabis no longer probable cause to search a vehicle. I know for an absolute fact we've seen a 25% decrease in the amount of guns that we're seizing based on that law. We simply aren't seizing the same amount of guns as we were in the past. In our past conversations, I've even gone as far as say that it was almost synonymous, where when we had cannabis in a car, we were finding guns, and we were seizing a lot of guns. And I can tell you that on July the 1st, you started seeing a dip in those seizures. I guess some think that's a success story. I think it's awful, because what I was always preaching last year was that we were doing so good at seizing firearms that it was my contention that we were preventing those guns from getting to their locations or being used in the county. Shootings are up, violent crime is up. So can I correlate that completely to cannabis? No, but there's some strong, I think there's some strong evidence that would suggest that the fact that we're not getting these guns has resulted in some more shootings this year than we had last year, if that makes sense. I will tell you that we just had a robbery at Rise down on Fenton, the dispensary down there. I will say that is the only robbery that I can think of since the legalization or the decriminalization of cannabis that I've seen at a dispensary. And we've had a couple burglaries at dispensaries. But nothing, no major crimes in and around the dispensaries that we have in the district.
I have another question. I guess since we last met, at least our neighborhood, East Silver Spring neighborhood, we had that horrendous incident of people coming by late at night and burning the LGBTQ flags and the posters on people's lawn. And my neighbors were pretty outraged about that and a little apprehensive about it. I was wondering whether or not you've made any progress on that investigation and tried and had some success in identifying, who the perpetrators were.
Yeah. So no, I can tell you. So that is a vandalism, but the fact that it was a vandalism of the LGBTQ flag, or typically other, if the indicators are that the crime was against a class, in instance the LGBTQ, what we have to do is we make a number of notifications to our community engagement division. The detectives jump all over the investigation, and we start tracking those same incidents that we see in other locations in the district. But I remember when that occurred, and I don't believe that any arrest was made. And I believe there might have been video of that incident, but it was not clear. It was late at night, and it was the person was hooded up. So I don't think any arrest was made in that. And if any of my lieutenants or Captain Reed he knows otherwise, they can chime in, but I don't think so.
Yeah, Commander, we did follow up with that. I believe you were out of town when that event occurred.
All right.
Exactly as you mentioned, we did spend a lot of time out in the neighborhood meeting with residents. There was a community meeting that night that I believe Alan hosted, and we kind of talked through what the process would be. Very well attended. I believe there was about 70 or so people on that call. I think that video that was out in the media at the same time, they did ask for, we did ask the public's help to see if anybody could help us identify the people in that video. And unfortunately, at this time, there have not been any arrests in that case.
Thank you for that clarification. I know people are still interested in what happened to Joe Reynolds. I wonder if you can comment on this on that investigation.
Alan, I have no new information. That is, as far as I've been told, and I don't talk about that that incident often with major crimes. I'm more focused on kind of the more recent things, but I do not believe any new information has come in regards to that investigation, and it's still an unsolved homicide for us.
And we're sorry to hear that. We'd love to see that person brought to justice.
Absolutely.
You mentioned at the outset of your remarks that you wanted to say something about police staffing, and so
Yeah.
love to hear something about that. I would just sort of mention that this is kind of related. Last spring, I made a call to 911 because I saw somebody in distress in the Wheaton area, and I was on hold on 911 for more than 5 minutes. And I'm wondering whether or not that issue is, I've seen advertisements, but I'm wondering if that issue's been addressed. And I think we're all interested in police staffing. And so if you could comment on that.
Yeah, so as far as the emergency communications, who your phone calls go to, they are in some bad shape as far as staffing is concerned. They for those of you, so normally normal operations in Montgomery County, all 6 districts have their own channel. So the 3rd district operates on channel 3, 1st district channel 1, 6th district channel 6. We've hit such hard times with staffing in our emergency communications that we are we basically have 2 districts on one channel now. So the 2nd district, Bethesda, and the 3rd district, Silver Spring, we operate all operations off the same channel. It just causes a little bit more chatter on the radio. And causes officers just to pay attention a little bit more, but our radio designations help us determine who's getting calls for what. But we're doing that more often than we used to. We used to do it overnight hours because the calls for service dropped, dramatically at the early morning hours. But we're starting to do that almost 24 hours a day. So as far as ECC is concerned, they are on a huge recruitment efforts. And they need some men and women to put in for that job. So as far as the police department's concerned, we have staffing predictions, or we have known retirements. I think what's interesting is that 60% of the Montgomery County Police Department can retire right now, and that's a little shocking, but 60% of the department has the required amount of time to actually retire with a full, pension. And that's concerning. Having said that, we know when certain people or a certain amount of officers are going to be retiring in the coming months. What we don't know about is unanticipated departures, right? That could be from a termination, that could be from a resignation, that could be from somebody who wasn't scheduled to retire but decides I'm going to retire, right? So what we recognize is that Montgomery County averages about four departures per month on the department that we don't know about. For those of you who or kind of pay attention to things going on in the district. Last month, unfortunately, I had one of my more senior sergeants. He had a medical event and he passed away. We don't predict things like that. So we've seen a steady departure from a lot of different reasons. Our last academy class, I got 6 I got 6 officers out of the academy, and I have 15 weeks basically to train those officers. Of the 6, 4 of them made it. One of them left to go to an agency down in North Carolina, and one did not complete his training successfully. So of the 6, 4 of them are on the streets right now, and that's not going to cut it. We need to put more officers on the street. Currently, right now, I'm operating with I'm about 26 police officers short, and the reason that it doesn't really affect the community is more than it affects how I run operations. But I have a minimum number of officers that I'm required to keep on the road at any given time. And I've talked about this before. For my day work, there's 13 officers. For my evening officers, that's the 3 to 1. That's 16 officers, and then my midnight officers, that's 10 officers with each of those numbers with a supervisor. And so I never go below those numbers. Unfortunately, in order to not go below those numbers, I've been having to do mandatory holdovers. So basically, an officer that has just worked 10 hours, I'm having them work an additional sometimes 9. And that kind of wears on those officers. We do a really good job about tracking them and making sure that they're not sleepy or overworked or tired, and that they're alert and available to work their shifts. But we're doing that more and more because of the departures that we're still dealing with. And I can tell you that it's going to get a little worse before it gets better. We have predicted and known retirements, and our academy recruitment efforts are lacking, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But we're not putting in the academy classes that we were 5 years ago, and we're lucky to really kind of seat 25 officers. And of the 25, sometimes we only successfully get, say, 16 or 18 of them through. So those are going to be continued problems that we'll see. And I know that the department's doing a lot of different things. They're looking at staffing in other districts, and I don't know if anybody's paid attention to it, but the chief made the decision, and I think we implemented it in October, the beginning of October. But Montgomery County is pulled out of Rockville City and Gaithersburg City as far as first responders. We will help them with emergency calls, but we do not handle any calls for service that are not an emergency. So the calls basically will be stacked or held for the city police departments. Third district, we didn't really see the benefits of that, because the officers that were gained from the 1st district and the 6th district, they were split up and divided to the 2nd and the 4th district to handle their shortfalls in officers as well. But so we're always working to do things to reallocate resources, and we're looking to do things smarter. That's why we say the drone as a first responder is a really good idea, but because it's going to have to fill the gap while we're rebuilding our resources and manpower.
I was really heartened to hear about the successful Adopt a Neighborhood program up in, is that Burtonsville? Where was that?
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if you've ever given any consideration to implementing a program like that for sort of downtown Silver Spring, for the Giant, East-West Highway, or the Safeway on Thayer Street, where you have an officer comes by and helps people load up their groceries and makes friends with the kids and that kind of thing.
It's very interesting. So the Adopt a Neighborhood, that is taking officers that are working and specifically having them hold themselves out in a community engagement status, and that's how we kind of track our efforts there. Whereas the things that we're doing in downtown Silver Spring are all a result of overtime. So basically, I'm paying additional funding. I'm putting, more resources into downtown Silver Spring for the walking beats with that funding. So that's separate from the Adopt a Neighborhood because that's focused kind of crime suppression, high visibility. And so that's what we're going to continue to do in downtown Silver Spring. I mean, ultimately, and you've heard me say this in past meetings, but I would submit to you that there are more police officers in downtown Silver Spring at any given time than any other place in the county. And we're going to continue with those efforts because of the call volume and the issues that we're dealing with. But sometimes it's hard. We put officers out on foot patrols up at Fenton and Ellsworth. We don't want them to get so far away from their cruisers that it makes them kind of takes them out of the game, right? So we focus on having them kind of move throughout the district. And I'm certainly can work with Captain Reed and Lieutenant Galador, and we can look at other areas that we can push some of these walking patrols by the giant East-West Highway and Wayne Avenue and things like that.
You still
Now,
have
Alan, just for your information, we actually do have the Adopt a Neighborhood programs in downtown, but like Commander McBain said, we've got so many efforts focused on downtown Silver Spring. The Adopt a Neighborhood programs are more out in like up towards Georgia Avenue, up towards Colesville Road and stuff like that. We're trying to spread out our resources, so we're not just putting all of our eggs in just downtown Silver Spring. We're trying to get them out into the communities and stuff like that.
As you can notice, I'm playing around with the technology, so trying to get that to be more interesting to our audience. And then I guess the last question I would have, and if anybody else has got questions, please let us know. It's on. You said there were a lot of traffic stops, and I'm still unclear what the criteria is for a traffic stop. Is it just speeding? Is it going through a red light, or what is the criteria for a traffic stop?
Yep. So, obviously this made news with Councilmember Jawando's STEP Act, right? He was, he was really focused on preventing law enforcement from doing traffic stops on specific types of violations. And the Attorney General submitted a letter to the County Council indicating that he in fact couldn't do that. He couldn't supersede Maryland state law. A traffic stop can be conducted on any vehicle once probable cause is established by that police officer. That could be for a minor violation of a what we called a COMAR violation, like a tag light out or a brake light out, or it could be for a more heinous violation of high speed, speeding, reckless driving, running red lights, right turn on reds, anything like that. But for anybody that's ever seen the traffic article for the state of Maryland, it's a good 1.5 inches thick. And anything in that book is kind of open for an officer to develop probable cause for the stop. So my officers are doing a lot of stops for registration violations for, I was talking about the LPRs, the license plate readers. Those license plate readers also let us know when vehicles are operating on suspended or revocated registrations or uninsured motor vehicles and things like that. So, we do traffic stops from everything from very serious violations to very minor violations. The idea of us doing traffic stops for the repair orders, like the headlights or the brake lights or cracked windshields and things like that, is the state of Maryland doesn't operate like Virginia and other states that have yearly inspections. Maryland doesn't have a yearly inspection. We have a one-time inspection when you register your motor vehicle, and it's law enforcement who makes sure that people, individuals who own vehicles and are operating them on the roadways are operating them in a safe manner. And we are that inspection that's kind of ongoing 365 days a year.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Anybody else have any questions that they'd like to ask? Commander McBain and the lieutenants? Well, Commander, I want to thank you so well. Here's a question from Emmanuel. Please go ahead, ask your question.
Good evening, Captain, and the 3rd District leadership. Thank you so much. I went through right along, and I saw the pain, like a lot of things that our officers are going through. But I would suggest one thing. That drone program, there is a lot of acceptance in the community. So is there a way that to continue engaging with the community, make them understand the benefit of it? So at least, just to help like criminals away from what they are doing. So yeah. But thank you so much also for your leadership.
Emmanuel, you did a ride along with us, correct?
Yes, I did. Fantastic ride along.
We spoke on the phone, and I appreciate I appreciate the fact that you rode with us and you see what we do on the daily, every single day. And I would encourage anybody on the call, if you want to do a ride along, you can apply to do that and ride with an officer in the 3rd District. But Emmanuel saw firsthand some of the things that we deal with every day. And to answer his question, anything that, when we say that we want to move forward with things like drones or camera systems, or, something's important to law enforcement, if you agree with that, I would encourage Emmanuel and anybody else on the call, make it known to your county councilman. Really, that's who represents you. They're supposed to be listening to their constituents. So if you feel strongly about it, my honest opinion would be make those things known to your county councilmen and women.
Absolutely. Thank you. I got a positive, response from some council members. But unfortunately, it's almost 3 years that I have to get a response from Mr. Joando. So I am hoping to get one.
Yes, sir.
But thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for asking that question, and Commander for telling us about the ride-along program. It's something I've thought about for 20 years and haven't done it yet. But I know that some of our elected officials, like Kate Stewart, have gone out and have learned a lot. Dan Mayer, you've got a question.
Yes, I see in the chat room that the issue of babysitting, the unpleasant nightlife between 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. It states here, sometimes this detail takes 6% of the officers off the road to babysit this area. I was wondering, how much does that actually cost the department, and in essence, the taxpayer, that I think the council should be aware of when they refuse to enact appropriate legislation to prevent this nuisance activity from occurring in the first place?
I think and the county executive, so the county executive a few weeks ago, he too rode along with our midnight crew, and I have to say, I think he understands what we're dealing with, but I think for him sitting in our roll call, and seeing how many officers are actually working any given night throughout overnight hours, I think he was a little taken back when he sat down there and there was just 9 officers that were sitting in there responsible for all of the 3rd District, to include the mess of downtown Silver Spring. And he's been very positive in some of the comments that he's made about the respect, and the how impressed he was with the fact that these 9 men and women kind of held the fort down, to so to speak. So as far as putting a money value to it or a cost, it's kind of hard. But what I will say is that sometimes things like on Bonifant, in the early morning hours, things erupt, and there's just so many people there that not only do we have to bring in our resources, but there are times when we call in officers from every single district to come down to Silver Spring and to help us to disperse these crowds. And what it really does is it takes the patrol away from its normal responsibilities, hyper focused on these issues downtown. But I'll also say, and Captain Reed had spoken about it, we're still funding additional officers that we're calling in every single night to, as you said, babysit downtown Silver Spring throughout the early morning hours. So there is a bit of a cost associated with it that we could apply, but to give the finite number, I'm not so sure. But I do know that the county is aware of what we're doing down there, at the council and the executive.
I'm sort of afraid to ask this question. How large are those crowds on Bonifant in the wee hours of the morning? Are they 10 or 15, or are they 200 or 300, which is what I've heard sometimes?
200 or 300.
Yes.
Captain Reed, he can. Our camera systems have amazing pictures to tell the tale, but Captain Reed can tell you, because he goes down there and works at night sometimes.
I've been down there with Lieutenant Galladora, and there will be us two with about 7 officers with about 150 to 200 people running around Bonifant, and we're it's like herding cats. It really is so frustrating, just to see it in the officers' faces, looking for change, looking for help. Like Commander McBain says, we're calling in other districts. We're calling in the Maryland State Police when we need them. These officers are working the butts off. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. They're working their butts off out there, especially on the weekend.
It is a weekend thing, principally. It's Friday, Saturday nights, mostly.
Whenever the hookah bars are open. And that's another thing. We don't even know when they're open. Some nights they're closed. Some nights are open. So we just have to be prepared every night to go down there and the officers to do their jobs. So the supervisors have got to be on it. They've got to be vigilant. The officers have got to be vigilant. They got to be communicating. I mean, we've got top-notch officers and top-notch supervisors that are on it, but it is every night.
Got a couple of questions, and then we'll close up. Karen Roper.
Hi, thank you. First, I want to say thank you, Captain Reed, and all of your officers have been fabulous in downtown Silver Spring and in Fenton Village specifically. But I wanted to remind everyone on this call, the small businesses, the neighbors, we've been asking the council for the change in law to fix this since 2018. So just so you know, this is your council that has stopped it. The county executive recommended the changes we asked for. He's done everything he can. The council is refusing to match their laws to DC and PG. And this has been going on for 5 years. It's devastating our small business community. They're getting calls at 4 o'clock in the morning when they're in bed, that their windows are shot out or their alarms are going off. It's really out of hand. I wish more of you would push the council. And again, thank you to all of our officers.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen. There's somebody on the phone, 240-688-6303. Who's that?
I couldn't change my name. This is Lenny from Kava Cafe.
Lenny.
I tried to put my name. Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you for all officers. So I just wanted people to understand we've been in that area since 1996. And lately, well, since the certain businesses are, I'm just being honest, like if I have an event at 6, if I have to go in at 6 o'clock in the morning, I have to look around before I go in my place.
Yeah.
By the time I come in, it does not mean there. At the beginning, it was just like, I'm like, what is this? I thought it was like daytime. It has to be honest, it has calmed down a lot than what it used to be. But if you come at Friday morning, like Saturday morning, Sunday morning, if I have to go and I have to watch, then I have to go in. Like I take my phone. I have never been that like afraid to go in my shop. So I just wanted people to really understand it is not, I mean, other places closes there. I have done it when I was young. Some of them, they're pretty okay. I actually used to have this food truck in front of Kafa and they sell stuff out of the things, okay. But I'm not saying that everyone that comes there have guns or things. I don't know. I'm not trying, but I wouldn't even mind to have a, what do you call it, that vest to go in. Really, it's not, I'm not joking. It is not very comfortable to go in. Every time I pray, I'm like, I hope nobody is there when I have to do event.
Yeah.
So I think that is for all the community. I don't think it's a good thing.
Well, I think this is where it's really unfair to the business owners like her and the people that live there is we have day work officers responding to fights at 7 o'clock in the morning. I mean, that's ridiculous. On a Monday morning when people are waking up to start their work week. This is where problems happen when they're up all night and they're drinking and they're smoking and they're doing nothing good is going to come out of that. And the council even admits that in their rush to make downtown Silver Spring a nightlife community, they did not enact laws. They did not put buffers. And I don't know why they should all be on board that, yep, this is getting out of control. Everybody else in the area is rolling things back. We should do it too. Yep. Because if we're open, crime is going to come to us and we're going to have to deal with it. And that's what we have been saying for years.
I think
my hope is really to invite every council member at 6 o'clock in the morning to come at Bonifant. Just when you see it, you will understand. Yeah. I'm not exaggerating. I really hope each one of them come and really be at 6 o'clock in the morning in that area.
Lenny, let's do it.
No, seriously, I really want to.
I really
want to. Yeah.
I'm a full supporter of this. Lenny, you are Kafar Coffee like owner. So we can gather our community, our Ethiopian community, talk to them, do something, because that is the time the council members get attracted, because when it comes to election, definitely they will wake up. So that's what we have to do. Bring them in, talk to them, what is happening, and then if they don't listen, there is a consequence after that. That's election. I will take you up, take you down. So that's what we have to do. Because
I think it'd be really effective to see some video, because I had no idea that there were such large crowds there so often, and I didn't know about that. I'm sure the council members, most of them don't know, and if they do,
they know.
They know. I have shown them. I have shown them pictures.
Yeah, they might know. I have seen it on a video. When you see it in the morning, when you really physically see it, you understand it more. Yeah. You'll see it more. You'll see it more, really. So it's not, I'm not, just for them to understand it, I really wanted them to do, just to see, just drive by there, just to see. It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, to have, just to even that legislation to see that is happening. I don't know who makes that law. I think it's the legislation. I mean, yeah. So it will be helpful for them really to understand it.
And I think really important for all of us to see it, understand it too, so we can, make calls and send emails, because it sounds like a terrible situation, and we are understaffed on that late night shift. So having people babysitting there seems to be very problematic. I thought that would be the last comment from Lenny, but Dan, you want to say something about this since you live there?
Well, just in closing, it's my experience that money talks. And I would encourage you to keep a ledger of what all this costs the department. And when the budget comes around and they start moaning and groaning about budget shortfalls, you can explain that their legislation has caused these costs. And that might, make an impact more than what peasants like myself have to say.
Gotcha. Thank you, Dan.
Money.
Well, we appreciate Commander McBain you joining us this evening, and Captain Reed and your lieutenants. I think this kind of conversation is useful for all of us. And next time we'll get together, it'll be in December. Hopefully you won't have any bad news to report, and hopefully these numbers will level out or trend down. But it is a really concerning situation that you described in great detail. So we want to thank you, as always, for all that you do for us with declining limited resources. And if there's anything that we can do, please let us know. So thank you again from Safe Silver Spring.
Well, thank you guys, and have a great evening. Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.